Hey guys, we are back. Another episode here, The Big Break. Drew and I. Corey will be joining us here in a little bit. Um, Drew, crazy, not maybe not a crazy end of the Big Ten season, but like a lot of different surprises, or not surprises, but a lot of things happen at the end. You know, we were just talking before we started the show here about your experience at the Big Ten championship game, and how it was different from years past. You want to go ahead and give your experience on the Big Ten championship game? So was it in that like big like plaza type thing that was there, right? Like where like this music stage was? Okay. Right. Wow. That's crazy because I remember like when we would go to like the Big Ten championship game and stuff, it was always like there was always like hype around. People were having like, people were amped. You were watching the games outside on the big screen, like, the earlier games because we always played the prime time. And it was like, oh, we need this team to win. Yeah, and then you get into the stadium and it's like a normal football atmosphere, just loud, people going crazy. Did they still have like the big fan zones? Naturally. Yeah. 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 I didn't watch the game. I I have a rule. I don't watch it unless it's that one game a year. I don't watch that team unless it's the one game of the year. That's just the rule I have in my house. Speaking of which, Iowa's they fired their offensive coordinator officially. He's gone, right? Because he was done after the season or bowl game, right? Well, that's a shame because they're gonna lose that. Oh yeah, oh yeah. Um, okay. I want to get your opinion on this. Was Florida State snubbed out of that final spot in the playoff? Like everybody's saying, they got snubbed out. Like, there's lawsuits going into it now. Like, I think so too, but I'll tell you one thing. I'll just tell you one thing. I think you're absolutely delusional if you think a one-loss SEC champion is not getting into a 14 playoff. That's just my opinion. Or the team they beat was number two, or the team they lost to was number two, and the team they beat in the SEC championship was number one. You're right, but I just think you're absolutely delusional if you think a one-loss SEC champion was not going to get into the playoff. Truth, the SEC, true. Amen. They don't really have any value. But oh yeah, Florida State's gonna get out. Yeah, Florida State's definitely going to get out. I heard the Big Ten by the end of the month. That's what Florida State said. They said they're gonna leave for the Big Ten by the end of the month. I, yeah, I don't know if that would be a good fit for us. Um, be just like, but I mean, it would be very interesting to like see Ohio State play like Penn State, and then the next week Florida State at home. You know what I mean? Like in like late October, early November, having those guys come up here be very interesting. Um, I don't know. I don't think they did, to be honest. I don't think Florida State got snubbed out at all. Um, and I think that's part of my reasoning is this college football playoff committee's job is to get the four best teams in the playoffs, right? To pick the four best teams to go to the semifinals. Well, this year I think they got it right. I mean, Michigan, Washington, Texas, Alabama. What? Because I think it would still depend on what they did against um, Louisville in the title game. Because like no, it wasn't. And I think that's like what people don't realize is that when Ohio State went in 2014 with Cardell Jones, their third string, right? They didn't just beat Wisconsin and then get chosen to go into the top four. They won 59 to nothing and made a statement that it doesn't matter who the quarterback is, we're going to beat whoever you put in front of us in that game. You know what I mean? That's what that game told me. Like, yeah, it was a statement game. Like, it doesn't matter who's throwing the ball for us. We're gonna beat whoever we play. You know, and so like if you're gonna compare this to that, I think that's definitely not a good comparison because number one, Florida State didn't beat Louisville 59 to nothing. It was a tight game all the way to like the fourth quarter, and then they scored like twice, and it looks a larger victory than it actually was. It, I get it, and I get it. No, it no, yeah, absolutely. Like it Bama would have, yeah, exactly. Ohio State would be in it. You know what I'm saying? Like so, and I agree, but like like the last year, I don't think. the committee got it wrong. I think if you're looking at it, um, I think if you're looking at it, it's pretty much the same. You know what I mean? Yeah. Thank you.
Very fun to watch. But Jalen Milrow is also very fun to watch, and Bama's defense is also very scary.
Their defense is very scary. Absolutely.
Mhm.
Um, man, Milrow's fun to watch right now because he's playing really good ball. He looks in complete control of everything that goes out on the field. You know what I mean? He just looks like
Yeah,
he's in control. Um,
looks confident.
looks very confident, you know? And like on Florida State's end, like you got to realize, like, yeah, you're on your third string quarterback. You didn't have a good showing in your conference championship game that you would want to see out of a top four team, even if you're on your third string QB.
Yeah, and the weekend before, I don't remember who they were. Maybe it was Florida.
They
They were
didn't look
playing.
good.
Yeah, and that was the second string. That was Tate Rodemaker, who I do think is pretty solid quarterback. But I think that poor showing, and then him getting concussed, the third stringer having to start, the ugly championship game in the ACC.
Yep.
Like Florida State just,
They played themselves out of the playoff
yeah, they
a
didn't
little
do
bit.
themselves any favors,
Once
really.
Jordan Travis went down, that's when they started their.
Yeah, and that's just it's bad luck, is what it is. I think, but it's Florida State, and it's a program that I don't feel bad for.
I don't
So,
either.
I mean, you'll be there. Maybe you'll be there next year. You'll be there. You'll be in the playoff the next couple of years. So
Uh, yeah.
you can
Speaking
prove it.
speaking of the 12 team, um, I'm I'm it's to me it's like kind of hard to get excited about it because like hold on, I just want to pull these up here real quick. So let's look at the so okay, here's the biggest question, and here's where your controversy is going to be in a 12-team playoff, okay? You're not going to have any controversy to your 11th ranked team, right? It's going to be your 12th ranked team, right? It's always the last person to get in. There's
Yeah,
controversy, right?
it might be the last two, just because there's more. But yeah,
Last two, okay, that's fair. Let's just take the last two: Ole Miss, Oklahoma, and then what do they do? The highest ranked group of five team is going to be the last team, I guess.
um,
Is that
yeah,
what they're going to? Is that
I'm
what
not
they're?
sure. I'm not sure if G5 gets an auto or not.
Because the G5 gets an auto New Year's Six Bowl right now.
Yeah,
So
so an auto to the playoff probably.
let's just say they give them to that. How do you justify Liberty over Ole Miss or Oklahoma?
I don't.
How do you
I you can't.
that right,
Liberty literally played the last rated strength of schedule in the country. 133 out of 133.
right.
So that 13-0 is incredibly fraud.
I I mean it's a good
It's good. They did what they were supposed to do. Their biggest wins are New Mexico State and Bowling Green, but Oklahoma beat Texas.
yeah,
Ole Miss beat someone.
but
Ole Miss beat LSU.
I guess like my and I always go back to this and like I was talking to Corey with this um like earlier was what oh there he is. Corey's in. Corey, can you hear us? Corey, can you hear us? Corey, can you hear us? He is connecting his audio. I cannot hear you.
Okay, there we go.
There we go. So, Corey, we were just talking about Florida State getting snubbed in the playoff, or if they got snubbed or not out of the playoff. And then we like transition into a conversation about the 12 team. But Corey, let's get your opinion here on, was it wrong? Did the committee get it wrong? That's how I'm going to ask the question. Did they get it wrong putting Alabama in over Florida State?
I think it's two separate conversations. Did they get the four best teams in the playoff? No. But at going undefeated means something. Going undefeated, whatever conference you're in, especially a Power Five conference, if you go undefeated, regardless if it's your best wide receiver, your best offensive lineman, your best quarterback, whoever it is, regardless, going undefeated is something that not a lot of schools can do and not a lot of teams can do throughout the whole season. For the simple fact that they were undefeated, in my opinion, they deserve to be in. Now, having a conversation about them being one of the four best teams with Jordan Travis, absolutely. Without Jordan Travis, they're not one of the best four teams. I just feel, regardless, if Jordan Travis, to me, the question is if Jordan Travis is their quarterback, they're one of the four best teams and are in the playoffs. So if he's there, even though he's not there, you were going to put him in. If he was there, then you put them in anyway. Now, in my opinion, I think they should have been in, and I think Texas should have been the fourth team. I think it should have been Michigan, Washington, Florida State, and then Texas, because you cannot put Alabama in without Texas. So now you can have every conversation you want about how that was due to money and how much more money is going to be brought in because Alabama's in there. You can go with an SEC bias. I mean, there's a whole
See,
number of things.
like I
I
was
think
telling
they should
Drew,
have been in.
like I was telling Drew, I just think you're delusional if you think a one-loss SEC champion is not going to make a 14 playoff.
Oh, 100%. And they would have been
Like
in
that's the thing.
regardless. They would have been in regardless. And I'm not even, to be fair, they probably would have, the one thing that really helped Alabama this year get in is the simple fact that Texas was the team that was going to make it. So having Texas be that they were going to make it and Alabama's only loss, the other thing is that you have to take into consideration is you can argue what the best win of the year is, but regardless, Alabama beating Georgia in the SEC championship game is going to be the best win. So you can
Truth.
right now, Alabama is one of the four best teams in the country. I think Georgia is one of the four best teams in the country. I think Michigan and I think Ohio State. I think the simple fact that if you put those four teams against any of the top 10, they're all favored by at least a touchdown against any of the teams. If Michigan would have been playing Florida State, they probably would have been three touchdown favorites. If Ohio State was playing them, they would have been two touchdown favorites. If Alabama was playing Florida State, they would have been two touchdown favorites. Georgia, two touchdown favorites. Now, Florida State has a chance to do something that is really funny to me and beat Georgia and then can essentially
Claim a shared
claim a
national title.
claim a national title if anybody outside of Washington or Michigan wins it.
Yeah.
Well,
Because
even if Michigan or Georgia win it, they could claim a share of it because they are
they
one of
could,
the two undefeated
but
teams,
they
just
would,
like Auburn did.
but the problem is if Michigan or Washington wins it, they're going to be number one in every single poll. If Alabama wins it, let's say if Alabama beats Washington, every team in college football had one loss except Florida State.
I think Bama would still be ranked over Florida State, though.
Me too.
You're probably right, but in that sense, they're the only undefeated team in college football. So essentially, claim a shared national title.
Liberty,
Well,
Liberty
We
Liberty
were
over
has
South,
just talking about
Liberty
that.
over Oregon. Just kidding.
We were just talking about that, and
look, respect going undefeated in whatever games you play, whatever. Okay, but if Liberty played in the Big Ten, the same schedule that Michigan had, they'd have 2 losses, 3 losses, at least.
Liberty.
By
Oh,
Liberty.
If Liberty, this team right now, their team right now played in the Big Ten, they would be 1-11, and their one would probably be an out of conference win.
No, Liberty's good.
They got a
Liberty's
sweet
good.
quarterback. Caden Salter's legit.
Yeah, they're
They
legit.
could probably sneak a few.
Okay, so
I mean,
3-9.
yeah, I
Hey,
mean, I don't. They're definitely not undefeated. That's for sure.
yeah.
I mean, I think they could also. I mean, they can put up points against a lot of teams in the Big Ten. Like, I feel like Liberty would probably be favored over like Northwestern. Would probably be favored over like Rutgers, even though those teams are good and could still beat them. You would think because of the way Liberty plays football and their high scoring offense, they would be favored. But I mean, it's a conversation that we don't have to have anymore after this year. That's the
Well,
thing.
so we were talking about that. The conversation next year and going forward is going to be the 11 and 12 teams and who got robbed out of that 11th and 12th spot or that 12th spot. I mean, and it's just what's
I
going to be
don't.
the conversation because they need something to talk about.
The majority of the things that you would look at, though, for instance, if you look at the top 12 of this year, right, most of these teams have played each other. So you're going to have conversations where it's like, okay, well, if it's a conversation between Michigan and Ohio
But
State, who goes, whoever won the game with the conference championship is going to be the team that goes. But the thing is it allows teams like Liberty, just like when we had the BCS, to get into the BCS, to have that game, you had to be a non-power five. You have to be undefeated. That's it. Unfortunately, that's the way it is because you can't literally claim undefeated Liberty is better than one loss Ohio State or one loss Penn State when their only loss is to the number 2 or 3 team in the country. You can't. It's just they don't play the strength
but
of schedule.
and so that's what Drew not, or what I was like getting at with Drew was even if they go undefeated, how do you justify like this year? How would you justify putting Liberty in if this is a 12-team playoff over an Oklahoma or Ole Miss, who's a two-loss SEC and Big 12 team? Like,
Well,
how do
let
you?
me Well, in this case, you can, I mean, you can do the same thing with every other team. Let's say Alabama and Texas don't play each other. Texas isn't in the college football playoff. In this sense, there's always going to be one team. The
Well,
thing
no, right,
is
but what I'm saying though is like how do you justify in a and I'm just using Liberty as an example, but how do you justify putting a group of 5 team in over a two-loss SEC, Big 10, Big 12 team or ACC team? How do you justify putting them in over because in my mind, this is what I always go to is if you take that group of 5 team and put them in said conference, of the team that you're looking at putting them over, would they have gone undefeated or would they have a better record than the team you're looking at putting them in? If the answer is no, then you can't put a group of 5 team in.
100%. I think it also depends on who those teams lost to. For instance, if Oklahoma lost to Alabama and Alabama and Texas are both in the playoff, that's not considered a bad loss, even if they lost by 30, because those teams are clearly one of the 12 best teams in the country. So I think it's a conversation. I also think 12 team matters. The rankings actually matter when they come out every week because you're going to see 8 win, Liberty, who's 8-0, And then you're going to have like a team like, let's say, for instance, Michigan's schedule is really tough next year. Let's say Michigan loses to USC and Texas, and they have two losses. That first college football playoff week, if is Liberty ahead of Michigan
At
with
six
two
and two,
losses
with
and
Michigan being
at
6 and 2.
6-2? Because knowing that Michigan has every way to move up in the Big Ten with still having to play Oregon and still having to play Ohio State, but having them ranked ahead of them shows you that they are willing to put them in the top 12 with those two losses or with an undefeated season for Liberty. If they're undefeated and above it, you're going to have that argument. Well, okay, well they're 13. That 12th team who was in it now has three losses. They're ahead of them. You're going to see right away in those first couple of rankings. Again, it's very hard to go undefeated. And if a non-power five team goes undefeated, I find it very hard to believe that unless that 12th team is a team that's a powerhouse, like Michigan, Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia, they would be in.
See, I don't
I can't see the committee putting in three-loss Tennessee over
know,
an
but like,
undefeated Liberty.
but I could see them putting in like, I could see them
A three I mean,
like, I
Oklahoma's in
mean,
the
look,
SEC next
here's
year.
all the 3 loss teams that they ranked ahead of uh, of Liberty this year: LSU, Arizona, Louisville, Notre Dame, Iowa, NC State. Those are just the 3 loss teams, and then you have the 4 loss teams, which is Oregon, Oklahoma State, Tennessee, and Clemson, are all above them.
Right now, right now.
No, but
But
that's
but
like,
it's also the playoff committee has a completely different mindset next year to these four teams. You could never look at Liberty's schedule this year and say they would make the college football playoff if they ran the schedule. There's no way you could do that because you knew going into it, just like you and I have talked about many times, Nick. There's never going to be 12 teams that are deserving of winning a national title.
no, you never have 12 teams.
You
Drew,
never have
would you
12 teams.
agree? Would you
Yeah, I
agree?
agree. I agree. I think if an undefeated like if Liberty did this next year, I don't think they're making the playoff. I don't think a Conference USA team makes the playoff. I don't think a MAC team makes the playoff.
I agree.
Um,
I mean, it depends. Look at, for instance, Bowling Green this year. Bowling Green played Michigan. If they would have beaten Michigan and have have a couple Power Five wins on their schedule, it's a different story.
they would need a lot of help from around the country. A lot of people taking L's. Um,
But
but
even
I
if
mean,
they
but those
beat
things,
like
Michigan, but Michigan
if
goes on to win the Big Ten, it's like,
I mean
okay,
if Bowling
that
Green's
only,
13-0,
but
maybe probably not.
that only makes Bowling Green's argument stronger if they beat a 12-1 Big Ten champion at the
Yeah,
beginning of the season. That means that they're undefeated and they beat the top three team in the country.
I guess.
And and you have to take into consideration that that game is on the road. No Big Ten
True.
team is going to play in Bowling Green where they hold
No,
20,000 people.
I
yeah.
don't
Because
just.
last time Indiana came in, we whooped their ass.
But still, I mean, like
But it's the
even
Hoosiers. Who cares?
I mean, like but it could happen. I mean, look
Could.
at Cincinnati. Cincinnati needed a lot of help to make the four-team playoff, and now, granted, they had a body of work over two seasons that put them in that situation. But let's say,
I just think.
Tulane has,
But speaking
maybe not the
about,
first year.
Cincinnati, I'm glad you brought that up, because speaking about that, Corey, though, they got hammered by Alabama,
But they were in that game through three quarters.
and and if I'm not mistaken, Alabama didn't throw the ball once, or like, I
It
mean,
wasn't. It was.
they
Look,
ran the ball, but
you're gonna be outmatched. But what my point is in that situation, they were seventh, and they needed four or five teams to lose. You're gonna have that same thing with an undefeated. You're gonna need three or four teams to lose to basically make it so that, oh well, we don't have a choice. We have to
Well,
put them in the top 12.
but see, and I think, but what I was getting at was just with how bad they lost that game is going to disqualify those types of teams from the playoff because like you finally saw like when they faced an Alabama when they faced Alabama it was just you saw that they weren't even on the same playing field.
I mean, I get that. And like for a Liberty or those teams, it's going to take not just one season. You're going to have 1 year undefeated, win your bowl game against a 2 or 3 loss SEC or Big Ten team, and then roll it right into next year where you can say, okay, well, they have a lot of the same talent. They've won 30 games in a row. You can't just not say that they're one of the 12 best teams when they've played 5 Power 5 conferences, 5 Power 5 games in that stretch. I
But
to
they
me,
but they
again, to me,
they
but
don't.
to me, I get you're gonna get 3 SEC teams and 3 Big Ten teams every single year. Everything else is a toss up. So you have 6 spots that are automatically taken, and then you have 6 other spots. That could be a Big Ten or SEC team. You have to understand. You can't look at the SEC and tell me that there are 5 teams out of the SEC that deserve to be in the playoff over an undefeated non-Power 5 champion.
This year probably because you got to look at who would be in their conference. So you'd have one, two,
Again, you're narrowing
three,
it down to the
four,
4 best teams.
five. No, I'm just saying like this year though, like I'm just going off of like the rankings this year. You would have Texas, Alabama, Georgia, Missouri, and Ole Miss out of the SEC. That's five of the 12 teams.
Okay, and out of the Big Ten, you'd have Michigan, Ohio State, and
You'd
Penn
have
State.
one,
That's
nope,
eight.
nope.
That's
You'd
eight.
have Michigan, Washington, Ohio State, Oregon, and Penn State. So you have nine.
So then there's 3 spots left. Liberty would take one of those spots.
Oklahoma's 10-2. They'd be in the SEC,
They're not. First of
and
all,
Florida State.
let's get something straight here. Oklahoma ain't going 10-2 in the SEC in that conference. I'm
No,
sorry, Oklahoma
Nope.
fans, that ain't happening. Okay, you may beat Texas because for some reason Texas can't beat Oklahoma. I don't understand why, but I mean, you're talking. I mean, you're talking about there's going to be those 3 or 4 spots out of the 12 that one of those teams could be in that conversation, and they have to do themselves a favor. Now, what does that tell you? Time Liberty, time to sack up, and time to schedule Tennessee, or time
Yeah.
to schedule a team like
yeah,
that said, oh, okay, well, yeah, they only won 6 games, but they also beat the number 2 team in the country. You have just to get that on your resume.
right.
That was legitimately why Cincinnati was in that conversation, because they went undefeated. They played Georgia really, really tough. Georgia went on to win the national title the next year, and they were deserving. They were undefeated, and don't forget,
And they
everybody
beat,
lost.
well, they beat Notre Dame that year in
They did
South
beat Notre
Bend.
Dame 100%, but then they still weren't in the top 4. They needed 3 teams to lose on conference championship weekend, which magically happened for them to get in. Those things happen. Teams lose on conference championship weekend
But
when they
see,
shouldn't.
yeah, but I think conference championship weekend going
It
forward,
doesn't matter
Drew.
anymore.
Well, hold on,
It
but
doesn't
Drew,
matter.
I think I want to get your opinion on this, but I think what it's going to be is going into conference championship weekend. It's going to be no longer who's going to get in, like who's going to stay in. Then I think it's going to be which one. Like if you lose conference championship weekend, you played yourself out of a bye.
For some games. I mean, there's still going to be some games where the number 15 team is playing the number 6 team,
No,
and
but that's
they
what I'm
pull that
saying
upset,
though.
they'll get in.
Yeah,
There
absolutely.
there will also be conference titles where number 1 plays number 3, and the loser, yeah,
Still gets in.
yeah,
But then it's also like you also like the other thing you have to consider is conference championship week is almost like the first round of the playoff. Because if you're looking at it from, like, let's say Michigan, Ohio State, let's say both teams are undefeated, and USC, who Michigan plays, but Ohio State doesn't play next year, right?
Yeah,
Okay. For instance, let's say USC loses to Michigan, but then runs the table. Michigan, Ohio State play each other. You
undefeated.
may get you undefeated. You may get a rematch. Even if you don't, even let's say Ohio State beats Michigan, and then you have Ohio State USC. Who benefits from that? Michigan, because they're going to jump ahead of USC if USC doesn't win the Big Ten, and they don't have to play on conference championship weekend, and you can clearly tell that they're one of the 12 best teams in the country. They get a basically a free bye.
Yeah, that's not a bad spot to be in. A
I
one
mean,
loss
you
team not in the
think,
conference title game
I mean,
could be
right. I mean,
worse.
like you
Get
that's
that
I mean,
extra week off.
and your loss is to Ohio State on the road, and you took care of business throughout the rest of the year. You're 11-1. You're in the playoff. There's no doubt you're in the playoff. You can't tell me that an 11-win team is not getting in the playoff with one
No,
loss, no matter who the
no,
loss is to. It doesn't even matter.
no. But that's what I'm saying. Like, but how do you even? But I guess like I, I guess here's my thing: is no matter what the scenario is I would always envision it. And this is the question: if I'm in the committee, you have to ask yourself: does that group of five team, if they're in the Big Ten or the SEC or the Big 12 or the ACC, do they have a better record than the team that we're looking at putting them in over? And I think that's the conversation you have to have.
I
Because I
think
think
some
that's the
years you
only,
will have that problem. Some
because,
years you will have that problem, and other years it'll be a lot easier to put a team in because you're not going to have, these conferences, this Big Ten conference and SEC conference,
yeah, but,
you might get a three-loss conference champion.
yeah, but they're still going to be in.
Correct. But if you have a three-loss conference champion and the other team is two losses and everybody else has four losses, you're only probably getting two Big Ten teams in.
You're not wrong. But,
So in those years where you would mainly think you're going to have a bunch of two-loss teams, and you end up having a bunch of three-loss or four-loss teams with an undefeated team on there, they're going to be in the top 12. It's just the way it goes. I don't think you're going to have any this first year. I don't think this first year. I think this first year you can lose three games and be a powerhouse like Michigan or Ohio State and still be in. But I don't think
absolutely.
again, every year of the 14 playoff had something a little bit different.
Yep,
Every single year you had something that you didn't expect to happen.
true.
I just want to tell everyone straight to their face that I told every single person that Alabama was going to beat Georgia 3 weeks before it happened.
True. You did. Um,
I said they're going to
let's
win, and they're in.
let's just go over our thoughts here on some of the Big Ten bowl games here. Um, we kick off with Northwestern, Utah, and then we have Minnesota Bowling Green. Drew, Bowling Green, go to play the Golden Gophers.
Guaranteed
Um,
win.
Rutgers plays the U at Yankee Stadium.
That's
Ohio
right, Bull.
State will play Missouri in the Cotton Bowl. The Peach Bowl is going to be Ole Miss versus Penn State. And then Maryland takes on Auburn in the Music City Bowl. There's too many bowl games. Wisconsin at LSU, the Reliquest Bowl, and then you have in the Cheez It Bowl. Sorry, the Cheez It Citrus Bowl is Iowa, Tennessee, and then the Rose Bowl for semifinal is going to be Alabama, Michigan.
Can we just talk about something for a second? Let's
What?
just talk about how Iowa should be where Penn State is.
Iowa should be in the Peach Bowl.
Mhm.
I think either
In
way
my,
they get their asses whooped.
I
I
mean,
don't,
probably, but I mean, in my opinion,
but
they
I,
played for a conference champion. Yes, Iowa has three losses. Yes, I
Oh,
get
I
it, and
guess
they lost
but
two
that's just
games, but
because
they
of the
played in their conference.
division. But like, that's the division they're in. Penn State's only two losses are to the 1 and 7th team in the country.
I mean, I get it, but again, one of those games. They were the third best team on their side of the divisions. The third best team. Iowa was the best team on their side. Now, granted, their side is terrible and full of junk and garbage.
If
Let's
Penn
also
State was
not
on that side, they would have
let's
played for the
also
Big Ten championship.
let's also take into consideration that Iowa technically, in my opinion, beat Minnesota with a punt return and walked it off and they called it back. So they win that game. They're essentially in the same spot where Penn State is. So that's just my opinion. I do think a lot of intriguing opportunity for the Big Ten. Teams, Northwestern coming to mind, a chance to beat Utah, who is a very gritty,
And
physical
they're on
Pac-12
the
team.
Las Vegas Bowl. Yeah, I think that's a
Yeah,
very important bowl game for the Big Ten. I think Rutgers taking on the U in the Pinstripe Bowl is a big game for the Big Ten.
Oh yeah,
Um,
it's the little schools that have to get
yeah,
it done because
yep,
you wouldn't see. I
yeah.
mean, like I don't expect. I mean, again, you don't know what to expect out of like Missouri and Missouri's high-powered offense, but like Missouri had a heck of a year. So even if somehow they beat Ohio State, I still don't see it as like a huge like loss.
right.
You have teams that are like middle of the pack. I mean, yes, we obviously want the Big Ten to beat the SEC whenever chance they get, but like you also have to understand,
Oh, I mean, we have
every little opportunity we can get, we got to take advantage of in some of these games.
we have we have
Mhm.
6 games against the Big Ten against the SEC this year in bowl games.
Right.
Um, the another I think it's a big bowl game for Wisconsin and Luke Fickle to move forward to move forward with their program. It
I
gets some
think there's a lot
momentum
of
going into next year.
100%. There's a lot of, I mean, a lot of these teams, a lot of these Big Ten teams, not a ton, but some of these Big Ten teams have lost some playmakers and some train to the transfer portal, which
Yeah.
is a whole nother conversation, a whole nother
Oh,
time.
we'll talk about the
Um,
transfer portal another time.
but I mean, it's again, some of these teams that have you say nothing to play for have everything to play for. You've got guys that came back to try to restore a program. You've got seniors going out. You've got a lot of things, and then Ohio State has to figure out quarterback and get the new system in, everything like that. You've got just a lot of different storylines coming out of bowl season, and it's going to be fun.
Drew, your thoughts on the bowl games?
Um, I agree. I think Utah Northwestern is a huge one. I think that could be a program lifter for Northwestern. Utah is an excellent program. Uh, I think I think Bowling Green's beating Minnesota. I think we might have serious problems up in Minnesota. They shouldn't be in a bowl game at 5-7, and for being how bad they are. I like Rutgers uh, at home. I hope they can beat Miami. Not
Yep,
overly confident in it, but I think Ohio State, Missouri is going to be awesome. I think Ole Miss, Penn State's going to be awesome, and I think Bama, Michigan's going to be awesome.
truth.
And I think Auburn, Maryland is one of the most boring bowl games this year.
Absolutely. Um,
Will Iowa score a point in bowl season?
Iowa's offense
Brian Ferentz going out on a high, 10 points.
by the
25.
offense, by the offense, right?
10 by
Not
the
by the defense, not
10
by
by
the
the
defense.
offense, 10 by Cooper DeJean.
If he plays,
Okay.
Oh yeah, that's right.
if he plays,
The
Um,
the problem with these bowl games is we don't know who the fuck's playing.
Yep.
yeah.
Like I was doing bowl pick
Lots of
the other
unknowns.
day, and it took me hours because you got to look who's in the transfer portal, who is
Who's
already going to
sitting
the
out?
NFL, who's
Yeah.
just
Well, and you
these
also
bowl
have a
games
lot
are
of
absurd.
guys, and you also have a lot of guys who are practicing for the bowl game and are going to decide in a few weeks that they want to go pro and
Yeah,
sit out and not play. I mean, it's
yeah,
just
and then all
to
these
me, it's
coaching
interesting.
changes.
I,
Who's
see,
going to the NFL? Who's not?
well, one thing I would like to see college football, um,
Move the transfer portal to January.
not only
or
that,
just or just
but
play bowl
also
games
like,
sooner.
well, what? Okay, so there's a couple things. One, I think we need to get rid of a bunch of bowl games. I don't think 6-6 teams should be playing a bowl game. Like you should have to have a winning record. So you need to cut some bowl games out. Number one, there's too many of them.
They won't because those companies pay to make the
Oh,
money.
there's
But I mean,
so much money
I'd
involved in it. But that's one thing I think
play
that
them
needs to be
earlier.
changed. Number two, one other thing I think that needs to be changed is something my dad always talks about, and that's no. If you want to fire a coach at like in the after your conference championship game or your season is done, even before you go into like bowl prep season, like if you're a bowl team, if you want to fire a coach or whatever, you can do that then. But I think and like I agree with my dad when he says this. He goes, you shouldn't be allowed to hire a coach, or a coach should not be interviewing for a job until that school season is done, and maybe even furthermore until the entire season is done, like after the national championship game.
Well, and like that,
Because
and it should be the same for players. The season is not
yes,
over. You can't because you have guys who, for
like Kyle
instance,
McCord, like why are you entering, like you're going to go, like you're in this bowl season, oh I can enter the transfer portal now and not go through this, okay, see ya.
well, but then you have guys that are like, again, we don't know how many there will be for Alabama or whatever. I know for
Yeah.
like Michigan has their running back CJ Stokes entered the transfer portal. He's entered the transfer portal, but he's staying with the team through the playoff run. So I mean, like, I mean, like,
Oh,
why is there a transfer? Because
that's
he
because
wants to
he
win a
was,
ring.
because if he's on the team, he
I
gets
mean,
a ring,
he would get a
and they want
ring anyway because he was on the team throughout the year anyway. So it's
to.
one of those
I
things where
don't
it's
know
like
if they would transfer before the games were played if they would give him one. You never know
I
in that
mean,
situation. You would think they
But that's what
would.
I'm saying. Like, but like a lot. Then there's guys on, like, for instance, like Alabama. Their wide receivers transferred already and committed somewhere else. So is he not on the team? Is he
Yeah.
somewhere else? Do you have, like it's one of those things where it's like they should play the Bulls earlier, and they'll have to once the 12-team playoff starts because they're going to have to start it a little bit earlier.
Dude, they're talking.
Um,
I think their original schedule, the 12 team, you're not ending until like the third week of January now.
right, right.
It's
But
just so
you also,
dumb.
but I mean, like, what's the point to me? What's the point of having the transfer portal open for the 3 weeks or a month now, and then it shuts down, and then it opens back up again once the season's over? What's the point of that? Like, just these teams, like, and the thing is it messes up the players too, because not again. Just I'm just going to use it as an example. I'm not saying it is legit like that, but for instance, you again, Marvin Harrison Jr. went to high school with Kyle McCord. They could be best friends. Not saying he's transferring, not saying he's going to the NFL or anything like that. Kyle McCord could have been his roommate, his best friend, and all of a sudden Kyle McCord decides he's out and is transferring. That could mess up a kid's mentality. Losing your best
Mhm.
friend that you had for 10 years playing football with, like that. Not saying it will or it does. That can mess up a thing, and that could also make huge noise. It happened last year. For instance, Oklahoma. Oklahoma had a heck of a season last year. Their coach leaves, their quarterback leaves, their receivers leave. All these guys leave before bowl season. And Oklahoma, who had a great season last year and lost 2 games or 3 games in their bowl game, ends up playing their practice squad because their whole team transferred. It'd be nice to see, oh,
Mhm.
Kyle McCord, we're gonna go and play Devin Brown a little bit and see, open it back up. If you don't like it, you can either sit out of bowl practice and just be a bum, or you can wait until the transfer portal opens and transfer, or you can get reps in and continue to play and have a shot to win the starting job again for bowl season. You can't have guys transferring because first of all, this is how scholarships and things get messed up for high school kids, this is how
Oh, it affects.
things
It's a trickle down
it,
thing.
it, it, it affects
It's a
everybody.
balloon.
And,
Yeah, it's an
and
umbrella effect because
it's I mean, you have
Ryan Day
scholarships
was
that you
actually
thought,
talking about it because he was like, he goes, with all these, there were certain guys we didn't think were going to enter the transfer portal at the end of the year. They have. Now we have extra scholarships available that we didn't think we would have had. And it's like, you're not wrong because you would have recruited that other 5 star or 4 star guy, or even recruited harder, maybe that 3 star guy who was really going to
oh,
get starting
well,
time
but
at like an Illinois, but he would have rather came
100%.
to Ohio State or Michigan or Penn State and
Well,
earned a starting job,
you miss out on the 3-star backup quarterback whose dream it was to play at Ohio State, and
regardless.
it's
Yeah.
just an honor for him
Regardless
to
if he
wear
gets
that.
the jersey, yeah.
Correct. And you, regardless if he plays or not, you have guys that dreamed of going to that school and would walk on to that school who a scholarship you think is available is not available now because you want to go sign the number one cornerback in the transfer portal.
Yep. Well, and that's another
It's
thing
in it,
is
but it's also the thing
you're
is
essentially just recruiting. You're in your recruiting. You're essentially now like in like these times you have to start recruiting not only keeping the high school kids that you started recruiting, but you have to now keep these. Now you have to go recruit the college kids.
but you also are saying
It's
it's
crazy.
okay. You're also letting kids know, and by letting them be in the transfer portal before the season is over, you're letting them basically have their own version of a temper tantrum.
You know,
Essentially, I'm not playing. I'm not good enough
so
here. I'm going somewhere where I can play. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with you transferring and going somewhere where you're going to get playing time if you weren't going to play. But now you have guys that are 5-star that are going to a school 1 year for money, and then they're
well, that's the
terrible.
NIL
But,
aspect of it.
but allowing them to be in the transfer portal before their season is over is allowing a 5-star guy to say, "Oh, I'm going to transfer from Texas A&M to Ohio State for the playoff run."
True. Well, and one thing I'd loved is Zach Smith said this about Urban on his podcast a while ago. He goes when like like when kids would look at Urban when he was a head coach at Ohio State and say, "Oh, I'm going to transfer to like Duke or I'm going to transfer to Kentucky," he would laugh and say, "Good luck." Like just laugh at him and say good luck. Like if you can't cut it here, what it makes you think you're gonna cut it playing against Alabama like the SEC and stuff like you're just delusional. Like you don't have the work
Well,
ethic.
Well, and I've seen two kids already that I got alerts from that were into the transfer portal and decided to go back to the school they were transferring from already. There's two guys already. But you can't sit here and tell me, and this is something Gino Oriema said a long time ago about women's college basketball. Again, like you said, if you can't cut it here, you're not going to cut it anywhere else. But here's the thing. The thing is it's there, you can't tell me that 1,000 kids chose to go to that school. They chose to go to that school for a reason. Take NIL out of it, make it for juniors and seniors. That's it. You get rewarded for an NIL. You go to a school for 1 year and you don't like it and you transfer. That's
Well,
fine, but your recruitment was not money related.
and I think, and I to your point there though, Drew, did you see what Michael Jordan said about even like when he was like when he still had his full like ownership of the Hornets?
Mm-mm.
What he was saying about like these massive rookie contracts, like extensions and stuff. He was saying back in my day, you earned your contract. Like I earned making $36 million a year. You know what I mean? Because I was the best player on the planet. Scotty, even though he didn't have that like the massive contract, deserved that contract because he was one of the best players on the planet, right? He goes, in today's culture, we are paying kids on potential. And that's what you're doing to these freshmen and like these kids straight out of high school, like Quinn Ewers. You're paying him on the potential that he's going to be a first round draft pick.
Well, and just because you're the number one player in your class or number two player and
Doesn't
have
mean
five
shit.
stars, that doesn't mean you're going to be better than a one-star guy who worked his ass off every single day 800 days to be on that field. It's just because you have that star, and that's a big problem. I know Nick, you and I have talked about how the simple fact that Ohio State alumni are willing to forge out.
Dude,
However,
they're talking
regardless of
$25 million, Drew. Did you see that? $25 million they offered Marvin to come back in NIL
now,
deals.
I've seen
That's
a
more
report
than
that
his that's more than what he would make as a rookie.
I no, and I mean, but here's the thing. Here's the
Gross.
thing. He made $20 million this year. He made $20 million this year. Regardless of if you say he did or not, he made $20 million this year
Probably.
because he's driving around an expensive car that he got for
Well,
free. He's
well,
driving around. Look,
okay. Well,
I'm
hold on a
saying, but
second. You can't judge
he
Marv
would
off
have
of
got
that. His dad's a Hall of Fame wide receiver. Like his dad could have bought him
He's
that car.
privileged.
a
I
100%, a
I'm just
He's
hundred
saying, like,
percent.
in
Okay,
certain
but
aspects,
but
like,
okay,
let's
no,
just
no,
be
but
real
there's
about
no
things.
reason why a freshman
I,
should be coming into college and getting a $75,000 car for free. And that happens not just at Ohio State,
no, it
not just
happens everywhere,
that
but
everywhere, and that's a
but
problem.
I mean, like, I don't personally have knowledge of how Marvin got that car,
100%. But I'm
but
saying, but he's not Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams transferred from
US
Oklahoma
Oklahoma to
to
USC.
USC, and he's living in a $2 million mansion right off of campus.
Well, that's just well, no, Drew, you do you agree with this? It should okay, let me ask you, Drew. Should NIL be endorsement deals or should it be what it was originally intended for? That the kids could sell their memorabilia, get paid for their autographs, literally their name, image, likeness.
Well, I
Or
think it should be that one. I think there should be a cap. Like no student athlete should be making like more than a half mil.
I
Like
even think that's a little much, but yeah.
yeah, I'm thinking like,
Well,
man, I would die for a half mil.
shit,
These
I would
these
die
kids
for
just got to sign a
50K.
fucking paper.
I'd die for 50K in college. I mean, like, my
You
thing
know,
is
you'd
it's
be
one
the
of those
shit
things,
in college.
right? My thing is you want to get an endorsement deal. I have no problems with that. However, your endorsement deal cannot be cash paid. You want to have an endorsement deal with Bose and they give you free headphones. No worries, no issues with that. The problem is you have guys at Texas A&M. I'll name them because I don't really care anymore. Their whole class transferred after the first year. I mean, they invested over $150 million in a recruiting class. Okay, that's a problem. Imagine,
Mhm.
imagine, and I
Imagine
mean,
if like Ohio State and Michigan
just
decided that we were going
that's
to do
just
the
doing
same
it.
thing.
I mean, Matt Rule said it. A good quarterback in the transfer portal this year costs you 1.5 or to $2 million. Okay, that's more than backup quarterbacks make in the NFL.
Some,
Yeah.
some.
Most, most. I would say most. Outside of San Francisco. I mean, to be fair, their quarterback's making less than 800,000 this year. But
Oh, what the New York
I mean,
Giants backup? What's his name?
I know
DeVito. He's making
he's
like
like the 300K.
yeah, he's making less than like the media guys do.
It's one of those things where it's these people have so much money that they don't know what to do with, and it's one of those things where it's like anyone
Look,
could do it. Nick, if
I
we wanted to make the rivalry better, we could,
if
if
we
we were
yeah, if we were
rich, we could have
stupid
our own
wealthy.
thing. Oh yeah, hey, I'm gonna throw you a mill to go to Michigan. Oh, okay, well I'll throw you two to go to Ohio State. Like it's just recruiting doesn't and there are good kids out there who see that and know that they go to a school, and I'm just using as an example, but a lot of kids use NIL for good too. Blake Forum, I know Marvin Harrison does too. I
Oh,
know there's
they
a
all
bunch of
do.
guys that use. They all do. But there are guys,
But
you
there
know, there are
shouldn't be
guys.
making, but you shouldn't be making what professional athletes make in a season. You're
If
not a
you want to use,
professional. This
if
is
you want to
amateur
use,
athletics.
well, and here's the thing, and and not only that, but a guy who's making, let's just say Marvin Harrison Jr. comes back to Ohio State next year and is making $12 million. Okay, God forbid, let's say something happens and he has a season ending injury and it turns out to be a little bit more serious than what it was, and he isn't able to play as a rookie when he's in the NFL, right? He made more, he's living off of that money that he made in college. That shouldn't be the thing. The NFL team should be responsible to make sure that he's good. Not his college paying him to keep him in school so he doesn't go pro.
Well, it's not even the schools paying them. It's boosters and everything. And I don't know. I just think this whole NIL thing is way out of control, and it should
The
have been
NCAA,
what it was intended for, with them just being able to sign autographs, get paid for their time if they go to like an event or something. If they want to sell a game worn jersey of theirs that's signed, or a bowl ring, or uh,
I don't
something that the
disagree.
team gave
Make
them,
your money.
let them sell it. You know what I mean? Let them sign an autograph or a tattoo if they want to do that. That's their prerogative. But I don't think anybody should be signing endorsement deals with like Gatorades, dealerships. You know what I mean? Like CJ Stroud had an endorsement deal with Men's Warehouse where he got free suits all the time, and like custom ones. Like that shit's a little ridiculous.
I mean, but I mean, it's ridiculous,
Like
it's one of
and
those things where that's what it is. That's why Colorado is becoming powerhouse and getting a bunch of guys. It's yes, they want to play for Dion, but they're also getting a little put right in their pocket.
and he has one of yeah. Well, no, and I don't disagree with that.
I mean, look, Dion recruited the hell out of guys and would get guys to come there if there was no money. Don't take anything away from Dion, but you can't tell me that the number one recruit in the country, who's an offensive lineman, watched Colorado last year and said, "Oh yeah, I'm going there."
right.
Mm-hmm.
You can't tell me that. Dion can recruit the lights out of any single person, okay? But if that guy watched Michigan, Ohio State, Alabama, and Georgia, and watched how they use offensive linemen and watched how Colorado used offensive linemen, you can't tell me that he went there just because he wanted to go there. He got a little milli, 2 milli in his pocket just for signing with Colorado, which is crap because these schools get free shit anyway. Look at
Mm-hmm.
USC. USC got all new Nike Kobe's that came out, whatever. They got them all, whatever.
Well,
They want to sell those for money. Be my guest. They were given to you as a gift.
and
But the fact that you're getting paid cash money and these guys are rolling around with Rolexes and shit rolling around in it for no reason that come up from nothing.
Drew, at what point do the scholarships matter? I mean,
Doesn't.
at what point does like
It
that not
doesn't.
matter?
A walk on makes more money than you and I make on a yearly basis, and we work our ass off.
I think uh, the scholarships. Well, the scholarships are kind of two things. Like you only have a set number of
No, but
scholarships as a
I'm
coach.
saying like
As a player,
what
uh,
like as fact as like considering like their NIL, they're getting, and I don't know what college tuition is, so I'm going off of, you know, freaking 15 years ago when we were going to school, college, it was like $20,000 a year or 25,000 a year. Like, at what point does that $100,000 scholarship not matter as compensation for them playing for this team? At what point is that like not a factor?
It's becoming baseball. It's College football is essentially baseball.
yeah, we need a salary cap.
Every
Then
team, I mean, you a salary cap. I don't even know a salary cap would do it because you'd still have the under the table crap that people would get to get people to
yeah,
sign
but
it.
that's been happening
But
forever.
but I mean, it's baseball. You literally go 1 year, you become an unbelievable player, and all of a sudden, every school in the country who didn't recruit you wants you because you were unbelievable at that school. So it's a race. It's a race, and these kids are just playing the field. Kyle McCord was offered, I heard rumored $2 million to go to Nebraska, and Dylan Raiola was offered $5 million to go to Nebraska. So Dylan Raiola has been to four different high schools in 4 seasons. What caused that? NIL.
No, that's him jumping around. He's been at three
That's
high
and
schools in 4 seasons.
but
It's
he was
insane.
offered money to go to Ohio State, NIL legally. Then when it went somewhere else, or he chose to go to Georgia, or Georgia offered him more
No,
money,
the reason
he
he's
went to
not
the
going to Ohio State is because he told Ryan Day that he will commit to Ohio State if he doesn't sign another quarterback in his class, and then Ryan Day was like, sure, whatever, and then offered Aaron Noland a scholarship, and he was like, all right, well, I'm not going to Ohio State. The kid just doesn't want to compete.
he went to Georgia, where Georgia gave him money, and now he's potentially going somewhere else because they're offering him more money. That is a 17-year-old kid,
Now,
okay? And all of
why would
us
you want to
at
recruit that
17 years
guy?
old, I mean, at 17 years old, if someone threw $1 million in our face, we're all gonna fucking lose our mind. Okay. And that's what it is. And I can tell you from experience, if you have a crap ton of money, right?
Drew,
You just have a crap ton of money thrown at you, you're gonna go there. And then if someone throws you more money, you're gonna be more willing to go to that place.
if we were 17 and let's say like you or I got offered like a football scholarship to go play someplace and we were off getting all these type of NIL offers, what do you think we would have done with that type of money?
Nothing good, dude. Throw
Right.
giant parties,
Right. It's one of
buy
those things where
stupid
and
shit.
it's one of
Like,
those things where I go back and it's like, you know, if I was
dude,
a football player back in our day, if any school in the Big Ten offered you, that was like, I'm going there. It doesn't matter if it's Indiana, it's the Big Ten. I'm going to play football in the Big Ten. It had nothing to do with money. And I mean, you see, it's helpful.
that's
I mean,
true.
look, take a guy like Michael Penix, was at Indiana, went to Washington for the better of his career, and now is
Probably
going to
had
go
NIL incentive to do that too.
regardless, he was going to transfer out of Indiana and go somewhere else. There was no chance he was staying in Bloomington. However much
True.
I wanted him to stay in Bloomington, and Indiana might be, who knows? They might be decent. But I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, now look at him. He's going to be drafted inside of the first two, 3 rounds, and he made more money in college than he will on his rookie deal in the NFL.
That's a problem.
I think NIL is further dividing the competition level. Tier ones are running away. Tier second tiers are our Indianas, our Purdue's are fucked, while Ohio State and Michigan are just going to run away with it.
And
Like,
Nebraska, who was consistently bad, just
mm-hmm,
because they brought in a new coach with a new mindset, and all of a sudden their donors bought into it and are donating money, they can buy their greatness.
mm-hmm. All it takes is more money. Michigan State, just throw more money at the program.
You're gonna
That's
have
all.
to.
That's all these schools are, and there's
You
going to be
don't
the
have to.
schools that don't,
You
and they're
don't
going to be
have
fucked.
to. You don't have to. And if you're not a team like Michigan, Ohio State, USC, who have a brand of college football, you're falling off if you're not keeping up.
No, but that's what I'm saying. Like, no matter what,
Yeah,
like who you are, you have to.
you're
Not
further
necessarily.
dividing the Power Five, and you're kind of completely fucking the G5
Ohio,
because
Ohio,
every G5 player is in the transfer portal.
yep. Ohio State, Michigan, Texas, Bama, Georgia, even if they didn't offer a penny, you would still get guys who want to go there for the brand.
Yeah.
You have guys now who are turning down millions of dollars because they want to go play in the Michigan Ohio State rivalry. They don't care about the $3 million because they know when they're a junior or senior, they're going to have that money anyway. These kids get a full ride. They get full equipment, full shoes, full everything from head to toe.
Oh,
From
dude.
head to toe. Every single week
Drew,
of the
what did
year,
you
they
get
have a
on your
different.
Drew, what did you get on your BG visit? Like when you went and toured the university? A
Uh,
little bag with like a pencil in it or some shit?
Yeah, one of those
a
drawstring
t-shirt
Yeah,
bags.
like a
with a
drawstring
t-shirt
bag that
with
had
a
like
little
a
with a
pencil and like
t-shirt
yeah, with like a
Ma-
and
t-shirt.
a
yeah,
They
a
and
got
generic T-shirt
a coupon to get $20 off the $50 t-shirt.
at the bookstore,
Right,
at their bookstore. Yeah.
specifically.
right,
Yeah.
right,
Oh,
right,
and we'll give you one meal swipe at our union at our
Yes.
cafeteria. You know what
right,
I mean?
right.
Like for
I mean,
you and
it's
your
like,
family, you guys could go
Yeah.
have lunch on us. It's like, oh, thank you.
I'd
well,
rather have field level tickets.
and
I'd
to me,
rather
it's
get a
gonna.
bunch of that cool shit that they all get.
I
Yeah.
mean, I remember being in college and when I was at UC and we went to the Sugar Bowl, and I would have died just for one of those backpacks that had the logo and the
Hmm.
Sugar Bowl logo right next to it. It was like, I want that. And I could never get that because they were only for players. Or you could spend $700 and buy it. Like it was like, it's one of those things where it's depressing. And to me, I know it's going to sound biased to everything
But
happening
do
in
you know,
Michigan and
like,
everything like that. The NCAA is worried about other things that don't matter. They're worried about things that don't matter. They're worried about how kids are. They're worried. Well, no, they're worried about how we're going to keep some of these transfer portal kids from playing a season, from playing the next year they play. They're worried about that. They're worried, if things happen and you cheat or something like that, I get it. And that's something that's important. I understand that completely. But you can't sit here and tell me that that they're worried about NIL because they just don't care. They turn their head the other way. They don't even look. Nothing. I mean,
well, no,
to
the
me,
NCAA literally when they made the law and said it was legal, they were like, here you
right.
go. You guys
A
wanted
guy
it
who
this
went to
way.
Washington,
Here, fuck it.
a
We
You
guy
won't.
who
deal with
went
the
to Washington,
mess.
Yeah, you
a
guys
guy
deal
who
with
went to
it.
Washington a guy who went to Washington State last year, who had an unbelievable year at Washington State in Cam Ward, is going to make 3 times the amount of money he made last year this year.
Well, yeah.
Because he's going to go to a bigger school that can offer more money, that
Well,
can do more things. These teams, like Drew said, Northwestern, Indiana, probably Wisconsin, these teams who can't afford to keep up, their quarterback. You have one good year of a good quarterback, and he transfers somewhere else for more
oh,
money.
you're gonna become a farm system for the top programs in the
What it
country.
is. That's what it
Yeah.
is. And you have guys that were at Ohio State who essentially wanted to go to Ohio State to play, aren't going to play because they're going to be investing money in transfers to play who help their
But
team
you
better,
had
and those kids transfer. I mean, yes, you
like
still had that happen.
as we were talking like earlier, Corey, like when Kyle McCord announced his transfer out of Ohio State, and it was like, oh, are you guys, should Ohio State go after like Cam Ward or any of these quarterbacks? I think it's only if you absolutely need to. As in that is, and what I mean that is like the year that they had Chugginoff and somebody else at Ohio State, the year Justin Fields was there before CJ came in 2019. It was, these two dudes were really bad. So it's like you had to go out into the transfer portal and bring somebody in, right? Like you had to for the sake of your team.
And there's differences.
So,
Some of these good quarterbacks that are in the portal, younger guys, potentially transfer to a good spot to wait a year and then play. And that's okay. But like, what happened to
what's
when
going
you
to end
had to
up
sit out a
happening?
year? You used to have to sit out a year for transferring. There ain't that anymore.
Well, I think the transfer portal, I think the one rule the NCAA needs to institute for transferring is you get one immediate eligibility transfer, and then every transfer after that, you have to sit out a year, and that year counts against your eligibility. So I really, and I think, right, and I think if you do that rule, those two things, you could really cut down on the kids that are going to transfer.
I think
Because think about this. Why would Kyle McCord, regardless if he's going to be the starter at Ohio State next year or not, his senior year, remember, and then he only has one more year of eligibility, why would he waste that year of eligibility not and he can't dress for games because you're not eligible to play, so you can't
I
put
mean,
on
you just
pads or anything. Like, why would
I
you
think
risk that
junior
instead
year.
of just staying at the school that you're at?
I
Drew,
think you should. Yeah.
do you see
Uh,
what I'm saying? Like, if they
yeah,
have to burn that year and that year counts as their eligibility and they're sitting out anyways, wouldn't that make you think twice about transferring?
yeah. Unfortunately, I get one free transfer, and then I get another free transfer if my coach is fired, and then I get another free transfer once I graduate. So
And you
you,
have the COVID year.
yeah.
But
Uh,
like, but like,
I
I'm
mean,
just
but
saying,
think about
like,
this.
but I'm just saying, like, let's just say in the instance, okay? Here, I'll play the scenario out. Look, Tate Martell transfers from Ohio State to Miami, spends 1 year at Miami, then transfers to Nevada, and then transfers away from Nevada altogether, like to a different like school. Should he be allowed to transfer from Miami without sitting out a year?
Shouldn't have been allowed to transfer from
mhm.
Ohio State without sitting out a year. I to be honest, the easiest way to put a stop to it, and this is legitimately what you do, is the transfer portal is only open to juniors, seniors, and grad transfers. That's it. That's it. That will cut down on half, at least half, because 90% of the guys that are
That's
in
true.
there are
Mm,
sophomores. God, I mean, if
yeah.
you have, I mean, like you have guys like the guy at Duke, Riley Leonard, played 4 years at Duke, grad transfer, could have stayed at Duke if he wanted to, but wants to go pro, so he's going to Notre Dame for 1 season to make his draft stock better. Fully agree, understand he should
Well,
be
that's
allowed to play.
always been a rule. That's always been
A
a
hundred,
rule.
100%. But you also have a guy like Dante Moore who was committed to Michigan, then changed his commitment to Oregon, and then at the last minute, UCLA threw money at him and said, "Oh yeah, why don't you come to UCLA?" Went to UCLA, is transferring, is going to transfer to a spot potentially to have to sit a year anyway. So my thing is he would have had to stick it out at UCLA for one more season, regardless of what happened, regardless his coach is gone. He has to stay there till his junior year. He may not play next year because he wants to transfer, but that's only hurting him, not
Yeah.
hurting the team.
Well, it hurts the team in the aspect of he's still taking up that scholarship. But I know what you're saying though.
But you know going into it that if I'm taking a freshman 5-star quarterback, I know regardless he is on campus for 2 years once he signs the national letter of intent. He is on campus for 2 years. And what does that also do? That also allows smaller schools that don't get as many scholarships, that don't have as much NIL money. Whoa, well, Ohio State has 3 scholarship quarterbacks that are under a junior year. They can go after this 5-star guy, but they have 5 scholarship quarterbacks. They're not going to go after him. That allows a Cincinnati to jump in the mix and say, "Oh, hey, you want to, you can be the number 2 on our guy," opposed to waiting for him to go to Ohio State and then transfer. Being
Uh,
keeping
I
I
s-
mean,
but I
keeping
still
guys.
think like if you were that deep, because you wouldn't sign three quarterbacks in a class. But I see what you're saying, Corey. But like,
I mean, some do. I mean, Ohio State will probably take a walk on and potentially may take a transfer this year. How many quarterbacks do you have on scholarship right now?
two.
3? Right. So if you take a transfer, potential transfer that might
Yeah, but
play,
that,
may not
but
play.
like, but if you're talking
I
transfers, like that guy's a junior anyways, so
again,
you're gonna
granted,
lose one of them.
right, but Kyle McCord was a junior, so he would be allowed to go. Fleming would be allowed to go. You wouldn't lose Evan Pryor, who's a freshman running back who is so
Sophomore.
far down or whatever, he's down on the depth chart, is transferring somewhere else. He would have to stay at Ohio State, which would then prevent Ohio
But
State from
he's a soft.
potentially
But so are you saying they have to transfer going into their
at,
junior year?
yeah, you have to be at the
So
school for
Evan,
2 years.
yeah, so Evan Pryor would be gone. That's what I'm saying. Like you wouldn't have that bottleneck at positions really, because
But
if
you also wouldn't have a whole recruiting class that committed to one school, all transfer different places, knowing that they would have to stay. They would be more willing to, recruiting would be more important if they had to stay at that school for 2 years. Now a kid knows I can go make money my freshman year, whether we're good or not, and I can transfer and play on a good team.
Drew, your thoughts?
Um, yeah, I mean, I agree. I think it's the Wild West. There's no rules. I think we need caps. I think it's a big problem. I like the you have to stay 2 year, the 2 year commitment. I like that a lot. Um,
I think it would bring back some formality back to college football, some like
Now, now within those 2 years, you're always going to have a guy who had a family emergency and is going to have to get the approval from the NCAA to
I
transfer,
think there should
things like
always
that.
be the
There's going to be
exception.
there's always going to be
yeah.
exceptions to the rule. But there are, if you go look in the portal, I think they said there's almost 1,500 guys in the portal. And I bet you of those 1,500 guys, I bet you three, four, 500 of them are not juniors or seniors.
Yeah, I'm just cruising through the
Maybe
portal
more,
right now, dude.
maybe more.
Redshirt freshman, sophomore, junior, sophomore, freshman.
Right. Those guys,
Wow,
not,
dude.
and not
And like
only,
big time players too.
right, and not only does it, for instance, let's take Walter Nolan, the number one recruit in the country last year. Every single college in America wanted him. He narrowed his list down to Alabama, Georgia, Texas A&M, Michigan, Ohio State. Everybody wanted him. Okay, he went to Texas A&M clearly for money.
Oh yeah,
Okay,
they threw a
and
bunch of money at him.
right, clearly for money. But look at him now. He's in the transfer portal, going to go get another bag from Oregon, who's going to pay him. And then when he's not good enough to play at Oregon, he's going to transfer again. It's one of those things where that situation, he, regardless of what happened with his head coach, he would be required to stay at Texas A&M for one more season. All of those freshmen that went to Texas A&M would be
Well,
required to
I
stay at
see.
Texas
I
A&M.
think if
Now
you
they could
lose your
all
head coach,
they could all make, now that's an NCAA thing. If they lose their head coach and they want to file an injunction to get approval to be allowed, that's something that they have to do, and that's something that could be granted. But you have a lot of guys that are at a big name program because they wanted to be
well,
at the big name
it's like
program and
it's like the
realize they're
Quinn
never
Ewers
gonna
thing.
play.
You're basically like you're talking about like the Quinn
100%.
Ewers of the world who went to Ohio State to make $1 million that year, and then knowing that
But
my heart was always in Texas, so I'm just going to
but
transfer back to Texas.
he could have. He was in college 1 year, technically 1 year, and transferred. So he would have had to require either stay at Ohio State for that second year or choose to go somewhere and sit out. He was allowed to play last year. He just didn't play as much because he was hurt. He shouldn't have been allowed to go to school for 1 year, transfer, and play for that team the next year.
Yeah.
That's not a, that shouldn't be allowed because
No, I agree with you. It
I
definitely
mean,
shouldn't be allowed. I
what
think that's
happens?
ridiculous.
For instance, let's say not that it will happen, but Texas, they signed Arch Manning. Let's say going into next year, Arch Manning is the better quarterback. Is Quinn Ewers going to actually stay at Texas? No, he's going to transfer to go somewhere where he can play, which will be his third school in 4 years. That's a problem. They're clearly going to school to play
I heard
football
I heard if
instead of going to school for what it's meant for. People forget these are college athletes. College is first. How
Hmm.
is a kid who goes to Texas A&M for a year than transferring to another
Dude,
school,
I
gonna
like the
get a
old
good
rule.
he's not going to school.
I
He's
like
getting
the old
paid
rule.
to go play football.
I like the old rule. The only way you got to play if you transferred, the only way you gotta play the next season for that school is if you were granted an NCAA waiver or you were a grad transfer. I like the old rule. Back when we were kids, that was the rule.
Mm-hmm.
I, you know, uh, that's the way I like that rule.
I think they need to move. I think the timing of all of this is completely ridiculous. December is a hellscape for a college football coach. The transfer portal opening right
Bowl
when
season.
right when bowl season starts, right when we're recruiting, we're 2 months away from National Signing Day.
No,
This is legit as fuck.
we're
The early signing period's February 4th.
no
Yeah.
January. It's like a couple weeks after the national title game.
Okay,
Well,
we're a
and
month
that's
a
Because
but
month
that's the
because
out.
that's
thing.
when Jim Harbaugh took his interview for the Vikings job because it was like NFL playoff time.
My thing is NIL and the transfer portal. All it's doing is hurting high school athletes. A three-star that's committed to Ohio State might not have a scholarship because Ohio State's offering the five-star Walter Nolan to get him on campus. Some guy that was committed to Ohio State for 3 years, after his freshman year, committed to go there, is not going to have a scholarship because of the transfer portal.
Mm-hmm. Sorry,
Yeah.
son. You can still come and be a preferred walk on, but
Right,
we're not
right,
going to pay for your school.
right.
Yep.
Ugh.
And that's and
But
that's
that's
a
what
and
happens to a
that's
lot of them. I
well,
bet.
and you can't tell me that all 1,500 kids in the transfer portal are going to end up at a school next year.
No, they're not. There's not enough spots open.
And so that leads me to my next thing. My next point is if there's those guys that are in the transfer portal, they're not, if once they transfer and put themselves in the transfer portal, can't go back to school. Sorry, can't go back to the school you came from. So at that point, all of a sudden, because now you're going to have guys who are, oh, I'm transferring from Alabama, but I thought people were interested in me, but they're not as interested. I'm just going to go back to Alabama. There has to be a regulation in a year where the NCAA is fighting battles that are useless, are fighting battles that are stupid and a waste of their time and money. They worry about those little minute details and things opposed to letting guys transfer whenever they want to. I mean, look at basketball. How many guys have transferred from one school to the next and are allowed to play, opposed to how many guys have to file an injunction to be allowed to play?
Oh,
I didn't see I didn't see Hunter Dickinson have any problems transferring from Michigan to Kansas. He fit in just like a glove right there. But then you have guys that are on Cincinnati and you have guys that are on Michigan who had to file an injunction against the NCAA to be allowed to play as a sophomore because they were hurt and transferred closer to home. What about that football player I sent you at the beginning of the year, Nick? His mom had cancer and he wanted to transfer home to
yeah,
be
that was
closer to his
bullshit.
mom, and he wasn't allowed to play this year. He transferred home because his mom to be closer to his
Cause
mom,
his
who was
no, like
fighting a health issue.
it was did you hear about that, Drew? I forget what school it was, but this kid going into like summer camp or something, or it was like right
I
after
think he was a
spring game.
sophomore. I think he was a
It was like
sophomore.
right after it was like spring game or summer camp, like like team activities are underway. Get his mom goes for like a doctor's appointment, finds out she has like stage 2 whatever cancer, and he goes, all right, well, I'm going back home. Like, guys, like
And
my mom has
it was his
cancer.
mom
Yeah,
who
it was
didn't
his
have
mom.
his dad had
Dad
passed
passed
away or
away
was not there or
there. Yeah,
whatever.
it was like just him and his mom, like a LeBron James type of situation, like him and his mom. You know what I mean?
No brothers, no
Just,
sisters, nothing.
he was just like, I'm gonna go. I need to transfer back to a school closer. I think it was like UCF. He ended up transferring to like
I think
UCF,
he wanted to transfer back to Florida,
Florida,
closer to home.
home.
And he was at, I think he was at Texas A&M or something like that. He was at like a bigger school.
Yeah, and he was like saying, I'm gonna transfer to like UCF so I could be closer to my mom and help her get to like appointments and stuff. Like, because she has cancer in the team. And like his like coaches were like, look, man, we understand like if there's anything we can do to help, the transfer process or whatever, like please let us know. Like we just hope everything turns out to be okay for you. And then he had to apply to the NCAA for a waiver and gets denied. And it's like, why? Why is that a
Is there a
thing?
shithole company?
But the NCAA allowed a guy who transferred because he wanted more money to play right away.
And allows Quinn Ewers to leave Ohio State after 1 year.
Okay, let's talk about Quinn Ewers for a second, okay? Let's talk about how he went from a junior in high school to a freshman in college in 1 month.
Fact.
Yeah.
Fact.
Let's talk about Dylan Royola, who clearly has never gotten a high school diploma because he hasn't been to class enough at four different high schools. At four different high schools, is being thrown money to go to a school. I mean, the NCAA has a very big problem.
You know
And
what's
the
gonna?
NCAA violations that are occurring are not, let's talk about how
Hey,
USC
Drew,
threw
do you
$10 million
remember?
dollars at Marvin Harrison Jr.
Oh
last
yeah,
year. Let's talk
absolutely.
about that. That's not illegal, but you're gonna tell me having a high school kid on the sideline buying him a hot dog at the concession stand is illegal.
I mean, he bought the kid a $21 burger. It wasn't like he bought him a Big Mac.
He
It's
bought him
probably
a
a great
burger. He
burger.
bought he bought him a burger on campus, and I can confirm that the place that sold the burger has now named the burger.
Well, yeah, but it was
So,
like, but it wasn't like he spent like $4 and they like it was a good $21 burger. But anyways, like
okay, but he's not
Drew,
spending. But he's not spending
hold on.
$10 million to bring a running back on
Speaking,
campus.
no, you're not wrong. But like,
Hmm.
but okay, so Drew, do you remember Noel Devine?
Yep. WV.
Yes. Remember how good Corey? You remember Noel Devine? Remember how
Yeah,
good that kid was?
he torched the
Mm-hmm.
Bearcats
Yeah.
every game.
Remember how
Fat
good
son
that
of a
kid?
bitch.
You know why he wasn't able to go? Because Ohio State recruited him, right? Because of obviously how good he was. You know why he wasn't able to go to Ohio State?
Mm-mm.
Because he got like the a just above a minimum score on like his SAT or ACT score. Like you get X amount of points for like putting your name on it.
Well,
He got like 300 more points for that than
well,
that.
and the
And
other thing
no,
I
but
have a
like
problem
Corey,
with.
like but to your point though, at what point are these kids gonna just be like, oh, I don't need to go to class. I don't need to take this test. I'm already committed to this university. And they're like, well, where's your test scores? We need to be able to legally process you into the university. And they were like, uh, what's going to happen then?
Well, again,
Because,
here's a
like,
perfect situation. Well, but there's a bigger problem too. You have an early transfer or an early signing period where you get guys from high school who come to college for bowl prep and get a head start, right?
well, they
Now,
come in
you also
after
have
bowl prep because
well,
signing
well,
days
but
like in
whatever.
January.
They're
But
on
they,
campus in January,
January,
supposed
and
to,
they get
and
spring
they have
practice.
and they have a head start on guys who did everything right but weren't able to get out of college early or high school early to be there. They
Or
have a
they
leg up.
chose
There's
to
always
stay.
there's always there's always been a problem with that. There's always been a thing like that. But then you have guys, but like early transfer, the early signing period, you can only take so many guys, and only so many of those guys can be on campus in January. There's a limit. I didn't know that. There's a limit. And the reason I found out is because Xavier Worthy committed to Michigan, went to Michigan's campus for the first day of school, and Michigan had taken one extra scholarship because a guy came back. and was already on campus and wasn't allowed to take Xavier Worthy into the admissions because they had already taken too many scholarships going into spring practice. So then he went from Michigan to Texas in 12 hours.
Wow.
Well, that sounds more that they were over their scholarship limit.
100%. But why if there's a scholarship limit for the early signing period
No, no,
and you have
no.
a certain
You're
that's
you
not I'm Xavier Worthy, there was a scholarship for him. There wasn't a scholarship for him during the early signing period. There was a scholarship for him, just not during the early signing period, and he was signing early. He did his admissions wasn't accepted into Michigan because they had taken too many. And
well,
so again, you can put a mess up on whatever you want, but a kid shouldn't be allowed to commit to one school, sign letter of intent, and then not be allowed and be able to go somewhere else.
well.
It
I,
should
I
just
guess
they should be allowed.
I would have to dig more into that story because
It's an
like,
it's an admissions thing.
well,
It was an
no, but it
admissions thing, and
sounds
there was a
like
mess up, along the way from some end, either Michigan's end,
because
Xavier Worthy's end, whatever. To me, there should be no early signing period. Go
no, it's
through
just
effing
early
high school,
signing day. You can sign. Ohio State signed like almost all their
listen to me.
entire class
Listen
on
to me.
signing on early
You
signing
go to
day.
high school for 4 years. Just because you're good at football, you shouldn't be allowed to leave early high school to go.
But you can
To me,
but like you can graduate early.
100%.
So why not? So it's up to the
But you have,
university. But why wouldn't you
but
be able to
but
enroll in the
but why?
spring semester?
Why should a kid be allowed to graduate early and enroll 2 months later into school and practice and get a head start against everybody else just because they're better or they're
No,
smarter?
that's their decision. Like
I
that
don't I don't agree with that.
uh,
A
th-
kid who leaves high school 3 months before
that's
another kid is making millions of dollars before a kid who steps
but
on
that's
campus. That's a problem. That's a problem.
I mean, but okay, so okay.
Okay,
Here
put it this
No,
way:
no, hold on. Let me
the
put it
best
this way,
player in
Corey.
the MAC.
I decide we're best friends in high school. We've signed our letter of intents to go, to go wherever, right? We both have the option of graduating early. I say, Corey, I'm gonna graduate early, so that way when I sign after like Christmas break, I can go start working out, get to know the guys, get the playbook, do all that kind of stuff and get a head start. But you
You should
say
be
to
allowed
me,
to get a you should be
but
allowed to
you,
get a head start
yeah,
on school. You shouldn't be allowed to be on the field with
but you're already
teammates because they're not it doesn't matter. In my opinion, you're starting problems by allowing kids.
but they've
And,
always been
and to
allowed
be
to do
honest,
it.
this is a Quinn Ewers thing all over again. He committed to Ohio State, went to Ohio State early, left his senior year of high school to go to Ohio State
He
early.
left, no, he left, he
Thought he was
forgone
gonna
his
be the
senior
starter,
year.
thought he was gonna be the starter, wasn't, and then transferred.
He would
Okay,
have
a
started the
guy
past 2 years,
in my
or
opinion,
the past year.
if you graduate high school early and you want to get a head start on college, be my guest. You should be allowed to do that, but you shouldn't be allowed to join the football team until the season is over and every freshman comes
They're
on campus
correct.
and
They're
is starting at the same
Dude,
time.
they don't.
It's not how it goes.
Yes, it is. They don't.
Really?
Dude, they can't
Wait,
sign.
so you don't have
They can't enroll into the university until they sign on the dotted line at the at in the early, on if they do it on early signing day.
correct. And they can sign on
So
early signing day to commit to that school and go to that school and
correct,
be
but they're
school
already
first, but
accepted
not play football.
but they already accepted their scholarship, so
I
they're
don't
officially
I
part of the
don't agree with
team.
that. I agree, but that I understand the rule, but I don't agree with it. I don't think a kid who graduates early should be allowed to join a team of guys who are in spring football and get a head start on everybody else because they're not as smart.
That's not the case. I'm just saying, like, and that's what I was trying to tell you is I decide to go, but you decide, you know what, Nick, Drew, I I want to go to prom. I want to just relive out the high school days. I want to graduate with all of my friends here and everything. And Drew and I just go, okay, well, we're gonna go early. That's a decision that that individual makes.
A
So if
hundred, and
they,
I'm not saying that that's wrong. I'm
but
saying that just if we're all committed to play at the same time, you go to college 2 months before me, you have 2 months ahead of everybody else.
correct, because
That's
I made
that's the
that.
problem.
But
That's
but
no
you
no.
didn't. No, no. But hold on a
That's
second.
for the benefit, but that's for the benefit of the football team. That's not the benefit of you. You're joining the football
But
team
that
to
isn't my
benefit,
benefit.
but that's wrong.
How?
If you want to start school early because these kids are in college to go to school, not to play football. Yes, they play football and that's an
I agree
extracurricular.
with Drew. Like,
You are
no, I'm there to
you
play football. Like, that's why I'm going to that school is
It's
so I could play football
it's
for him.
case
that's the
by case.
problem.
It's different.
Yeah, case
That's
Like
by
there's good guys, there's bad guys.
yeah. Like what Quinn Ewers did was wrong. I agree with you in that aspect. What he did was absolutely wrong. He didn't go to his senior. He didn't even complete his senior year of high school. Any part of it left so
what's
he
the
could
point?
make a
But
bunch
what's
of
the point?
money.
Right, but there's nothing stopping that from happening now. If you're a junior in high school and you're the
Mhm.
best kid in your class and the number one recruit, look at, first of all, we have it. Look at the guy in 2025. The number one recruit in 2025 is a
But
wide receiver committed to Alabama. He reclassified to 24 to get on
I
campus early.
so
He
right.
didn't graduate. He didn't graduate high school. He was leaving high school because he's going to get the bag in college
Well,
because school doesn't
but he
matter.
has to graduate high school, so he has to have enough credits to
Who
graduate from
says?
his
Who
school.
says? He can have as many credits as he wants, but that doesn't mean he graduates.
Because you have to
He
have a
could
high
be
school.
eligible.
You have to have
He
a
could
high
be
school or
eligible. He could be eligible to
no
graduate, but not graduate.
per no, but you have to graduate. You have to be eligible for any college, like to attend a college or to
You
even
have to have the
pl-
credits to graduate.
no,
You don't have to graduate.
you have to have a high school diploma or the equivalent like a GED. You have to have one of those two things to attend any university. That's a fact.
Yeah, yeah. You have to have a diploma.
You have to have a diploma to be able to go and enroll into a university. They will not accept you if you do not have your high school diploma.
I'm not so sure about that.
That's a
But just
fact.
again, just because
That's a
that's what the
fact.
but just because that's what the university rules are doesn't mean there are kids in college now that have a high school diploma.
Bet you there are.
It's fair. There's probably some cases.
I bet you they have a high school diploma or a GED because they took the test and graduated early.
So how do you guys go from being a junior in high school to a freshman in college in a month?
My cousin did it.
Take a lot of tests.
My cousin did it. She took she decided her sophomore year that she wanted to graduate early. So over the summer she took English 11, took English 12 her junior
But
year
was
and
she in
graduated.
but
She was
okay,
a
but
junior,
that's
then
but
graduated,
that's
and
again, but
then went
that's
to
for the
college.
benefit of for the benefit of school, not the benefit of
It,
a scholarship.
but
She went to school, she went to do it for the school. All I'm saying is, again, I think
but
kids you go
but
to school to college to go to class. These kids don't care about it because
you're
money
it doesn't
talks. There's
matter.
no reason, there's no incentive to
But what
graduate
but what
anything.
difference does it make if they're doing it because they want to go enroll and get a head start on their college career and get those early reps in versus somebody who wants to stay in high school to graduate in May and then join during the summer?
Because okay, so in your sense, okay, you and Drew go to school and I stay back. Let's say Drew beats you out in spring practice, and in that early transfer period, you transfer. I haven't even arrived on campus yet, and you've already transferred to another school. Is there a rule telling you that you can't do that? No.
But
Is
there
there a
should
rule that
be
says
that you
I'm
can't
not?
transfer.
That's what we're talking about. I'm saying if you want to go get a leg up on school, and go graduate early and go to the school, go to the
Okay,
college early
but
to
what then?
learn the new system, to learn the new system. Okay, I get it and I understand that. But there's nothing stopping these kids from going to school early and dropping out because they're not going to be where they want to be and go somewhere where they can be.
You're not wrong.
That's a problem. That's a problem. And in a sense, what I was saying is if both of you decide to go to college early and you do the school part early, when I come on campus, we are all starting the football at the same time, which would prevent that scenario.
But what if, okay, so here's the thing is the kid doesn't like even the university after being in school there. He spent the 6 months there, doesn't like it, would rather be somewhere else that recruited him.
He would have to sit he would have to sit out a year.
But it's not football related, it's all academic related.
Okay? But he doesn't play sports. He doesn't play sports at all. Then
Okay,
his credits
but
that he
no,
gets
no,
no,
but
no.
that's okay. But see, now you're contradicting yourself because you said if he wants to go for the academics for school early, that's fine. He shouldn't be able to be engaged in the athletics. So then why, if he's only there for the academics and not there for athletics until like summer camp starts, then why wouldn't he be allowed to transfer without sitting out a year if he's transferring for an academic purpose? Regardless if he's playing football for that
It's a
new school or
situation.
not.
It's a
I
situation. First of all, if you transfer, in my opinion, I have always felt if you transfer, you sit out. That's the way I've always
I
felt.
agree with you, but
But I'm saying there are going, no matter what, there's going to be flaws. No matter what, there's always going to be flaws. The problem we have right now in college football is money, not the money that the teams make for the networks. You have a
what
alumni donating money to college athlete problem, and that's the problem. If a donor if I donate $100,000 to Ohio State and I say I want it to go to a new library, that's something that's benefiting the school and everybody that goes there. If I donate 100,000 to Ohio State and say I want it to go in yours, that's a problem. And you have teams that do
oh
that.
dude, you
And
don't
you
even have
have
to do that. You just have to
right.
set up your own NIL collective LLC and just offer Quinn Ewers straight up or offer whoever you want straight up to go to your school. It doesn't
We're
matter.
we're
It's the wild wild
we're
west.
in a very wild time.
It just
Hmm.
I think it's ruining college football too, in my
College
opinion.
football is MLB now.
Alongside conference realignment, really
Along
fucking this
that,
sport up.
yeah.
There's not, to be honest, there's probably only going to be three conferences in the next within the next two
Dude,
years.
That's gross.
within the next 5 years, I think we're down to two, and you're gonna have it, and you're basically, you know how like the USFL and the XFL are trying to be like the next thing for like the next football thing or like a spring football option,
Minor league, yeah.
the minor league for the NFL. I have a feeling you're gonna eventually, with the next 5, 10 years, you're gonna get down to two major conferences, and you're literally gonna have a miniature NFL, but it's gonna be the North versus the South.
Catch me in the FCS watching real college football.
Dude, it's gonna get insane because eventually that's what's gonna like FSU's already talking about leaving the ACC and joining the Big Ten.
And this is another thing, another reason why I believe that no G5 team will make the playoffs.
Yeah, like
I don't know.
could you imagine if FSU leaves and Miami just goes, there's nothing here for us anymore. We're gonna go join the SEC
The problem is
What
because
do
if
you do with ACC then?
it's gonna
FSU
get
is not going to
dissolved.
leave. I hope. Look, I want FSU to leave, but they're not going to leave. And if they did decide to leave, as much as I would love to have them in the Big Ten, they're going to be in the SEC. There's
Well,
no
there's
if
but
ands
the
or
only
buts.
rumors of them coming is to the Big Ten
But
because
they're also doing that because they got left out of the college football playoff and they feel like the ACC is not enough, which is not the case anymore. That's a 1 year deal this year. Next year, if they go undefeated, whether they
Oh,
have
they're
their
in.
quarterback or they don't, they're in. So it's a moot point. The problem is you're going to have big name schools.
Well,
Mainly, FSU has been one that talked about it. Clemson talked about it.
Clemson's
Other
really
teams
thinking
have
about.
talked about it.
They're thinking
Other
about
teams
leaving
are,
to go to
yeah,
the
they're
SEC.
well, because three losses in the ACC is not in. Three losses in the SEC is in. That's what a 12-team playoff does. That's the problem. There's not 12 teams that deserve to play for a national title. You lose 3 games, you don't deserve to play for a national
You
title.
know,
You lose 2 games, you don't deserve to play
you
for
know
a
what was
national
my
title.
you know what was
You
my
don't.
favorite thing that that was the discussion of the college football playoff last year was they said Ohio. Some of the commentators were like, Ohio State doesn't deserve to be in because they didn't win their conference. They don't have they're not a conference champion, so they don't deserve to be in the 14 playoff. Okay, but they were one loss team, not a conference champion. You know what, like, how many losses the 10, 11, and 12 teams had last year? Three each. But they deserve to be, but we need to expand to 12 to allow them a chance to play for a national championship.
Well, and
Like, it's
I mean,
ridiculous.
well,
Am I wrong? Am I
It's a
wrong?
safety net. It's the safety net, dude. We got to make sure we get all the money,
I,
programs, and the TV
I,
spots. Money, the only
well,
thing that matters.
to me, what's wild to think about is
Down with the system.
if it was year 2 of the college football playoff in 2014, there's a chance Ohio State doesn't make it with a third string quarterback. Only because it was the first year of it and they were the
I don't.
most deserving, and it was a different year. It was a different year and things happened. But it's now when you
But
look
see,
back
Drew
on
and
it,
I, hold on.
10 years later,
Drew and I were talking about that though. I, but see, it's completely different. You're comparing two different things because one, Ohio State that year beat Wisconsin 59 to nothing. They went out and
you
hold on, Corey. They dominated that entire game from start to finish. Wisconsin barely crossed the 50 in that game. They didn't get
well,
to the red
Wisconsin,
zone until the fourth quarter. Now listen,
well,
it but listen,
it's
Florida State
different
was in a
though. It's
dogfight
not that much.
against was in a dogfight against Ellis or against Louisville.
100%.
And
But Florida
that's
State also played the second best team in their conference. Wisconsin was not the second best team in the Big Ten. Completely. That's why it's similar to me. And if you hear me, I said the second year of the college football playoff, not the first. The first year they didn't know what to do. If the second year, if you look at it, if that was the second year of the college football playoff, the way they have done things have changed over the 10 years. I'm saying the first year of the college football playoff, Ohio State was deserving. There's no doubt. But there's also no doubt that Florida State is just as deserving.
but what okay, so I'll ask this. What is the committee's job?
Put 4 best teams in. They didn't even do that. They didn't even do that the first year.
What do you mean?
Every year of the playoff, there's been an
The
argument
first
that a fifth or a sixth team should be in the playoff.
right,
The four, let's
but
be honest,
the
four best
first
teams in the
year,
country this year. But every year, if you go the 4 best teams in college football, it's never been that 4. Never been that 4. How many times has a 2-loss Alabama was one of the 4 best teams in the country and didn't get in? How many times did Ohio State or Michigan deserve to be in there with 1 or 2 losses, but wasn't in there because of their losses? The, there's a difference between putting the 4 most deserving and the 4 best. There's a complete difference.
yeah, but I don't think, and Drew, you could correct me if I'm wrong. Could you be like, I don't think you consider a two-loss team to be one of the best four teams, especially
What
if
if they're
there's
two?
I
What
think
if
it's possible.
what if their 2 losses are to the 1 and the 3 teams? What if those three
It's
teams,
possible.
for instance, let's say the Big Ten merged this year. What if Ohio State lost to Washington and Michigan? They're not one of the 4 best teams in the country.
in my
Maybe.
opinion, no.
What if
Depends
those
Depends.
what the
games
rest of the country does.
Yeah,
what if those games are both on the road and they both are
I
one score games?
but but
To
then
me, look,
see that to me,
Georgia is one of the four best teams in the country this year. Anyone argue?
no.
Yeah.
But they
Where are they? They're not in the playoff because they weren't deserving because they didn't win their conference championship. All Florida State did, and I'm just this is the last thing I'll say about it. All Florida State did was beat, no matter how they did it, they beat every single team that was put in front of them. You can't say the same about Alabama. You can't say the same about Texas. You can't say the same about Oregon. The only teams that you can say that about is Michigan and Washington, and they are 1 and 2.
Yeah,
So
Florida State followed the directions the teacher set. They colored in the lines and did perfectly.
they
And
won a conference championship. They beat every team that was in there, and that included two SEC teams. Two
yeah,
SEC teams that were really good and one possession away from potentially being in the college football playoff. LSU is potentially 3 plays away from being in the college football playoff. Let's be honest. Alabama needed a 4th and 31 miracle to beat Auburn.
yep,
They got lucky on one play. Florida State didn't get lucky. You can say, oh, yeah, well, they got lucky on a play here and there. They still won 13 games. Only two other teams besides them did that. That's deserving, in my opinion. Does that make Florida State one of the four best teams? I could make the argument that with Jordan Travis, Florida State's not one of the four best teams.
that's fair.
And here's my thing. Let's say Florida State had Jordan Travis and they lost to LSU. One loss conference champion Jordan Travis FSU is probably still in the college football playoff.
Not over Alabama. See, I think what gets tricky is no matter what. So I think what
They
people
never
are
put they never put
hold
the
on.
four best teams in. That's what it
Well,
is.
and I think with this year though, I think here's where the conversation really went in was Florida State or Texas. And when that came in, they said they argued Texas, but then it came to the point where, well, you can't put we have to if we put in Texas or we know Alabama's in, but we have to put in Texas too because they beat Alabama and we said head to head matters. They caught themselves. I think the
yeah,
committee really screwed themselves when they said we look at head to head and that does matter. That's why Alabama's not ahead of Texas. Instead of ranking Alabama ahead of Texas because saying and just coming out and saying, look, this Alabama team is different than what we saw at the beginning of the year, and we believe that they are the fifth best team in the country, even though they lost to Texas week 2.
mhm.
At
um,
home. At home.
yeah. To me, week one, week two games are kind of wash. So
Yeah,
like that Florida State
It's not
LSU
even
is kind of a wash.
it's not even the same team. I mean, like
Yeah,
yeah,
If Alabama played Texas now, I think we'd all agree that Alabama would probably be favored by a touchdown.
and I don't even think
uh,
favored. Fuck that. I think they win.
Well, I mean, right. So
That's
it's just one
but
of
so
those.
that's and that's why I'm saying like I think in the committee's room though that they were like I think it's a conversation between Texas and FSU, and when they
I
decided to
think
put Texas in, they had to rank them 3 and Alabama 4
well,
because of the head to
you
head.
couldn't you. The thing was if Alabama was going to get in, Texas had to be in too. There was no way. Once Texas was shown at 3, everybody knew 4 was Alabama.
Oh yeah.
Because if Florida State was in, they would have been 3. Everybody wanted them to be 4, but there's no way that you can put one loss conference champion Texas over undefeated conference champion Florida State. So as a ranking
mhm.
wise. So as soon as Texas was 3, Alabama was 4. That was it. That was it. There was no way you could hope and pray, but there was no way. And that's unfortunately the way it goes. And unfortunately, they've never gotten the 4 best teams. In 2014, you could make an argument, I'm sure, for like I think if I remember, like Baylor. I think Baylor had one loss, and their loss was in the Big 12 championship game, I think.
They
So I
didn't
mean,
have a
like,
Big 12 championship game that year.
or whatever. So they
But
had one loss
but
and whatever. But I'm saying, but
okay, so
there's
who would
always,
you have?
no matter what,
But see, like here's where I think in 2014 they truly did have the best four teams. You had undefeated Alabama, undefeated Oregon, undefeated defending national champions FSU, one loss Ohio State, Big Ten champion. And Ohio State won it all that year. I don't think if that was TCU or Baylor playing Alabama that they go on to win the national title. And that's why I think they
which is
got the four best teams
which
there
is
that year.
which is why when my statement said with Ohio State having one loss and on their third string quarterback, one loss and third string quarterback. It was the second year of the playoff, and there was a team that was deserving that had a full set of starters that had the same team that played all single year with one loss. Potentially, there's a shot that that team gets in because that's exactly what happened this year. So there's
But it
always going to be
depends.
potentially that.
But I
It,
think it
again,
depends on how that team plays in that conference championship game.
the
Because,
committee was always told to get the four best teams.
well,
Now, the four best and deserving are two different things, and we all know that they did the best deserving every year of the playoff. And let's be honest, the 12th, 13th, 14th, and 15th teams, all of those teams, all of those teams are going to be either are they deserving or are they one of the 12 best teams? It's the same argument you have, just like you said at the beginning. It's instead of having the fourth, fifth, and sixth, who are the fourth, fifth, and sixth best teams? Now you have who are the 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th.
well, my argument was there is can you make the case for a group of five team to be in there? And I don't think there's a possibility of that happening.
It
And I
depends on
think,
their schedule.
but
Depends on their